Remember that old Patsy Cline song, Your Cheatin' Heart? The lyrics went, your cheating heart will make you weep. You'll cry and try to sleep, but sleep won't come the whole night through. Your cheating heart will tell on you. When tears come down like falling rain, you'll toss around and call my name. You'll walk the floor the way I do. Your cheating heart will tell on you. Now, perhaps this song is about someone who is hurt, hoping that the person who threw their love away will someday regret their actions and will long for what they lost. But listening to this song all these years, I've always imagined that somehow, someday, the cheater would himself or herself be cheated on. Now that would be some poetic justice. We all know that two wrongs don't make a right, but I bet we could all admit to having fantasized about doing to others what they have done to you. Sort of turns that gospel lesson on its head, doesn't it? But it would serve them right, getting a taste of their own medicine. Everybody loves a story when someone who took advantage of people gets taken down in a sting, where they're brilliantly taken advantage of themselves. It burns so good. Because nobody hates being swindled more than a top-notch swindler. And today's scripture lesson is one of those stories. You may remember the family drama that had landed Jacob in Haran. He was a guy on the run. Things were too hot at home for him to stick around. He had extorted a promise from his brother with the lure of food. When Esau had a terrible case of the hangries, he would have sold his mother into slavery to get a bowl of that stew. He was that hungry. Well, luckily for her, he just agreed to give up his inheritance. Then Jacob, convinced that he was in the moral clear, and with his mother's help, created an elaborate disguise. Jacob convinced his blind father that he was bestowing on Esau the coveted blessing due to the firstborn. When Jacob's deception was discovered, there was hell to pay. Esau swore he'd kill him. Dad was furious, and Mom, well, she was keeping her head low, denying her part in the whole scam. So Jacob slipped away to safety and a new start in life. Oh yeah, he was smooth, all right. Esau might have been hairy, but Jacob was as smooth as it gets. Now, we might wonder what the big deal was. What was the power of the blessing, and why couldn't it be retracted? Well, the blessing that Jacob stole from Esau was specifically the blessing of primogeniture, one of the existing cultural institutions that, the story went, that God had incorporated into the laws of Moses to promote order and provide for those in need. The book of Deuteronomy commands that when a father dies and his inheritance is divided, that the firstborn son is to be given a double portion. In that particular culture at that time, women didn't own property, so they were dependent on male relatives, typically their fathers, and when they got married, they would be dependent on their husbands. But any unmarried or widowed sisters without children would have to depend on the oldest brother after the father dies. That's why he was given a double portion, so that he could care for both his own household and for his extended family in his father's stead. Now, it was customary for a father on his deathbed to bless the firstborn son, asking God to give him material abundance so that he could provide for the family, and signaling to the other brothers that the authority had passed to this one, the one who would preserve order within the clan. Accordingly, when Isaac blesses Jacob, thinking that he's Esau, his firstborn, he says, "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's riches, an abundance of grain and new wine, and be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you." Now, God doesn't always follow the custom of primogeniture as we might expect, given that it said that God ordained this. The Old Testament is full of examples of God choosing younger brothers over older ones. Isaac over Ishmael, Jacob over Esau. Even before they were born, God told their mother, the older will serve the younger. Judah over his 3 older brothers as the ancestor of a royal line, and David over his 7 older brothers as king, and so forth. It seems that God simply looks for the person who can best fulfill God's purposes. Now, truth was, Esau wasn't really that much into being responsible and taking on the family mantle and all of that, so God probably was right to choose Jacob to be the leader of the clan in years to come. But how Jacob went about obtaining his destined place was all wrong. His deceit fractured the family that his leadership was supposed to keep stable and secure. Now, isn't it true that sometimes we get messed up in trying to do the right thing, but going about it the different way, the wrong way? For instance, we might keep a secret in order to not hurt someone's feelings. But then we'll lose their trust when the secret comes out and it's revealed that you knew all along. A parent concerned about their child might snoop their computer history, or, like we did in the old days, might read their diary. It's an unforgivable betrayal of privacy. But we rationalize it as something we have to do because we are worried. Your child might only forgive you when they themselves have a child and are similarly anxious about them. But Jacob kicks it up a notch, as Emerald used to say. It's clear that Jacob is a hustler. From his birth, he's always tried harder to get ahead. He was born holding on to his twin's heel as if to say, "Oh, no, you don't, me first." His name, Jacob, indicates that he's always grasping, or on the take, you might say. He was a schemer, too clever for his own good, perhaps, which is why it is somewhat satisfying in this story to see the swindler become the swindled. In Uncle Laban, Jacob has more than met his match. The young kid is outfoxed by the granddaddy of fraudsters. Jacob works for 7 years for Laban with the promise that he'll get to marry Rachel, with whom he has fallen madly in love. The night finally arrives and the wedding takes place, but in the light of day, Jacob realizes it's not Rachel underneath that veil, it's her older sister. Maybe it was because it was dark, or maybe they'd had a whole lot of wine, but Jacob ironically finds himself in his father's position, unable to see well enough to determine the true identity of the person you're dealing with, relying only on clothes and trusting promises of fidelity. Now, Jacob does get the girl, but he has to promise to work for her father without wages for another 7 years. The things we do for love. Now, tricky though he undoubtedly was, Laban was also just going about things, the right things, but doing them the wrong way. He had the obligation and responsibility to see both of his daughters provided for. Binding Jacob to him by using what he was hungry for to trick him into a promise seemed like a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I don't imagine Jacob appreciated the irony.